Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
V here, co-host of the Sleeping Barber Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the post-pod discussion of our most recent interview with Dale Harrison titled Zombie Metrics Don't Fall for Misleading Data. In our wrap-up discussion, Marc and I discuss how zombie metrics mislead marketers, why the ADA funnel is outdated, and why data literacy is crucial for interpreting marketing metrics, and so much more. And while I have you, feel free to like, comment, share, and review our episodes. If you have any ideas on what you'd like to hear, feel free to drop us a line as well. We're always looking to find ways to make the show a lot better. Now, on with the postpod.
My family got me a bottle of Aperol for Father's Day.
Nice.
I don't know if you remember when we were in France, but I was talking to them pretending like I know how to speak French. And so the waiter came by and I was like, an Aperol, por favor. I couldn't figure out how to switch over my brain to French, and I just kept speaking in Spanish.
I mean,
yeah, they thought that was really funny.
Tomato, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah. So we're doing the post-pod V for Dale Harrison.
Yeah, this is recorded a little bit after. Then we usually like to record these right after the episode, so I had to go back to re-listen. It's a banger.
Yeah, it's a good episode. Dale's really
it's
good.
It's a really good episode.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Dale's like the second time we had Dale on, and Dale's absolutely phenomenal. He's so well versed in all things, especially on the effectiveness side. So, man, where do you want to start with Dale's?
Well, I mean, let's start at the beginning. I remember we started by asking about zombie metrics, and I thought that was such an interesting thing, largely because it's like this invisible hand that's guiding us in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like the idea of, we talked about the funnel, and so because there's this generalization around how marketing works, and it works around the funnel process, there's all kinds of metrics that are associated with that we just don't question because that's just what we do and that's how we've done it and that's what everyone else does.
Totally.
And he talked about like I said frequency of 3. I think he said frequency of 7, but just simple things like that where you're like, well, that's just how you do things. Like, so that's how you buy and plan media. You have to set up a frequency of 3. And when you look at ad response curves, you're like, actually, maybe not.
No,
maybe I don't need the 7 impressions. Maybe it is better to do reach. Yeah. And so there's all kinds of things like that I just thought was really interesting from a perspective of, if you're trying to truly be the most effective and the most efficient, it's not necessarily the metrics that we are all used to that are going to get you there.
Yeah, it goes back to, I remember one of my old managers, this is back in the day where I lived and worked in Greece, and he would say, every time you would record a radio spot, that at minimum you want to have the brand show up 3 times. In the radio spot. And again, that was just something that I don't know if that was what he was taught. And of course at the time, that kind of makes sense. But the more you go, you realize that you inherit some of these zombie metrics that actually don't stand. Right. And this is where I think, like, as marketers, data literacy becomes incredibly important, and understanding what you're measuring, how you're measuring it, when you're measuring it,
totally
to ensure that you're creating the right stories, especially internally, or for your clients, because without it, you can mislead organizations, you can misinterpret the data in a way that maybe just tells you one side of the story instead of looking at it more holistically. Yeah. And that can become dangerous, especially when you're trying to make recommendations to drive desired business outcomes.
Yeah. He also made that really great point around when you're talking about anything related to a financial metric, like anything with an R in it. It's really important, like return on spend, return on investment, really important.
Any return.
Really important that you know what you're talking about, because if you don't get that right, you discredit yourself. And then from that point on, you've already lost it, because everyone's everyone, all the other people in finance and all the executive team that probably knows a lot more about finance than we do.
Totally.
Ends up just questioning whether you know anything, because you haven't gotten the fundamentals on the business side of things right.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with that. The one thing that again stood out to me was when we talked about the funnel. And the fact that it's outdated, I don't think there's many marketers that probably still use the funnel just because of it's just become widely adopted, and a lot of non-marketers are comfortable with it. They can understand the role of each layer, etc.
Yeah.
But it is misleading. It's misleading in today's environment. It's misleading in how consumers operate.
Yeah.
Because you can have people be aware, consider, and purchase all in the same session now.
Yeah.
Just
true.
by way people are consuming content. You think about, TikToks, Reels, Shorts, etc. Like, I can't get over the one hashtag on TikTok that's become extremely popular. It's like, TikTok made me buy it.
Oh, really? I haven't seen it.
Yeah. And it's just literally because someone in that moment is immersed in some content that convinces them to purchase. How do you model or use the funnel in that context?
Yeah.
It just
is so compressed. If it ever was real, it would just be all compressed into one.
Exactly.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting too. What, as you were talking about that, it jogged my memory on the origin story. He talked about looking at the origin story of a lot of things. And the origin story of the funnel was that it was created by a guy who was a sales trainer. And so the idea of like the cliches that we talked about where, keep your foot in the door, literally was a thing, a tactic for salespeople to put their foot in the door.
Put the foot in the door.
So the person they were trying to sell to couldn't close the door.
Yeah.
There's things like that where you're like, right. So in that scenario, if you're training people on how to sell, AIDA makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But when you apply it to marketing, it's not in advertising. It kind of loses its, if you think about it, how it was originally intended, and you think about how we're using it today in marketing, it kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
Because there isn't actually a door you can get your foot into when people are on a digital channel. Like, even more so now, like there's just ways that people can avoid even opening the door ever.
Yeah. No, that's a completely fair point. I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole here, but like, what would you recommend from instead of using a funnel? What should marketers be using?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I did a post about this a while back. There's at least 5 or 6 alternative models that I can think of. Like, there's the consumer decision journey from McKinsey. There's James Hankins posted the Hankins hexagon. There's the mental and physical availability. The messy middle from Google. There's ZMOT from a bunch of years ago from Google as well, and God knows how many other ones. But I think that's 5 additional ones. I think for me, like, I lean into mental and physical availability because it's built on evidence and that kind of stuff. But it doesn't mean the other ones are wrong. I think having an understanding of all of them is probably a good thing, and then you can decide from there which is the best for you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I naturally default to 2 of them, and the one is the messy middle.
Yeah.
To showcase some of that journey, or the fact that things are compressed. It's easier to describe. But then, of course, the mental and physical availability is, again, it depends on your business. But I feel like that one also makes it really easy to portray and tell the story and measure against it as well. Because
the other one that is similar that we didn't mention, but is kind of baked into the mental and physical availability one is the 595 funnel, which we did talk about with Dale.
Yeah.
I think that one's really productive. As far as a conversation starter, and it's relatively simple. Like, I think it's an easier gap to cross if you're going from a AIDA funnel to a 595 cash flow funnel, because it looks similar. It's not so different that you're kind of reinventing marketing to the executive suite. Yeah. So for me, that is a really productive one to use, because then you get into slightly different conversations around who's in market today, who's not in market today. How do we, creating demand now and then future demand.
Sure.
So that one for me is a really good one.
Yeah. No, I love that. What else stood out for you with our convo with Dale?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff on intent data that we got into. And I know you were lighting up a couple points in that conversation. So yeah, like for me, there's a lot of stuff there around intent data that I thought was super interesting. Starting with the ability to interpret signals from the channels that we're using it from, and whether they actually have accurately interpreted those signals.
Yeah.
You
It's
know, like,
yeah, go ahead.
no, go for it.
I was just going to say, like, intent data is I used to be a big proponent of, use the in-market intent signals as kind of being like the foundation. This is where you start. Like, make sure that you're able to meet the consumer that based on the intent that they're showing, and make sure you get an offer in front of them if they're, repeat visitors or whatever the case may be. But you start with intent. It's interesting though, because in absence of AMP or advertising promotion or, marketing dollars, it's hard to capitalize on those intent signals when you still want to drive growth, where you'll need to switch to more of, reach-based tactics, more awareness and consideration tactics instead. So it's really interesting that I've almost done a 180 here a little bit. For me, it depends.
But you're still using intent data. Yeah.
Yeah. You're still using it.
Yeah.
But the difference is, like, I would always orientate intent data around conversion metrics, right? So just looking at it just through the lens of conversions versus looking at it as a bigger, as a bigger ecosystem, right?
Okay.
Where you're using broader intent signals to drive, the awareness and consideration instead. So for me, I guess I'm just, the way I think about intent now, and I love the conversation that we had with Dale about it, because again, there could be some zombie-esque metrics in intent data as well. You have to be very careful on how you use it, how you're portraying it, again, how you're communicating it internally.
Yeah.
But most importantly, it's still one of the most valuable data set that you have when you're trying to go to market, especially if you can overlay, any sort of first party data into that. It becomes incredibly powerful.
Yeah. I know there's like, it just, I hate to think like everything that we thought was wrong, but I don't think everything, I think it's not so much that, it's more that everything that we thought was right might not be. It doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. So it kind of doesn't seem as fatalistic, but I think Dale had a point around, if you're going to use anything, try and validate it.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really good perspective, because just because the metric is there doesn't mean it's real or that's been validated.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? He brought up that snake oil salesman comment. Just because you put a label on it doesn't make it so.
Totally. And you mentioned, like, I'm at that point in my career where I don't mind being wrong.
Yeah.
I really don't. Yeah. Like, I'm a big boy. And if something has changed and something's not the way that I used to think it is, I'm okay to be challenged, and I'm okay for, I'm all right for it to be wrong. I just, as long as it's generating the right conversations and it's happening from a point of education, I'm all for it. So
totally,
I like the fact that I'm relearning our discipline right now, because I think it's making me even better, even stronger.
Yeah. I think it's a good point. Like, I think there's an appropriate amount of skepticism that you need to have when we're thinking about metrics.
I love that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not to say that, if you're overly skeptic, then you just become like a doomsday sayer. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to win any friends that way. But I think having, a curiosity about the measurements that are in front of you, and just say, tell me more. Like, what does that actually mean? How's that calculated? Where is that number? Where do those numbers come from? Well, how do they get that? You know what I mean? Like, digging in a bit more to the numbers, I think, is really into the source of the numbers and the construct of the numbers, I think, is really important, rather than just saying, oh yeah, like, I think I know what ROAS means. I think this thing is, the machine is telling me that I have a ROAS of X, and that, to me, this means blah, blah, blah. It might not actually have been calculated that way, but just clarifying that your definition matches what the platform's definition was.
No, exactly. The final thing from my side is, and this is why I always enjoy our conversations with Dale. He's obviously a big believer in, the marketing effectiveness principles, and, their role in actually achieving the real business results that we need. Which reminds me, we're going to we will be doing a marketing effectiveness specific episode where we're going to talk about the principles, the most popular principles. So then, people can have them at the ready. But it's just really, really interesting and always validating when you get to have these conversations with other practitioners, and they showcase how you can really bring them to life in a meaningful way. I don't know if you need any other reason why you should be leaning into these principles. Just look at Dale and look at the content that he pumps out. It's right there in front of you. You cannot not look at this and say, wait, this actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Anyway, I agree with you. I think that was a really awesome conversation. I really enjoyed it. Just so much to think about afterwards and chew on, which is why we do these, because we are trying to figure out how to apply it to what we're doing.
No, I completely agree with that. So Dale, if you've stuck around right to the end, thank you. Huge thank you for you for coming on again. We always enjoy the conversation that we have and appreciate the insights that you share.
Yeah. And to you, listener, thank you so much for keeping us in your ears. And we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Toodaloo.